Good evening, everybody. With the time being 7 o'clock on this wonderful November 14th of 2022, I would like to call the Planning and Development Committee to order. Can I please have a roll call?
St.Charles.
Here.
Calamaris.
Here.
Leitner. Here. Bongard.
Here.
Bancroft.
Here.
Lencioni.
Here.
Trilla.
Here.
Wirball.
Here.
Fessner.
Here.
Weber.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum. First off, we're going to start off with the omnibus vote. We're going to remove item 4G. We want some further discussion on that. So can I please have a motion and a second to move the omnibus vote?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Lencioni, seconded by Petrilla. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. That motion carries. Please let the record reflect at this point, I'm going to recuse myself from item 4A. I'm going to hand the meeting over to Vice Chair Lencioni.
Thank you very much. Moving on with the meeting, we're at 4A, Plan Commission recommendation to approve special use for recreational cannabis dispersing organization for consumed cannabis, 584 South Randall Road. Go ahead with the presentation.
Thank you. Union Group of St.Charles LLC is requesting special use approval to establish this cannabis dispensary located within the Randall Plaza Shopping Center at the northeast corner of Randall Road and Prairie Street. Per the recreational cannabis zoning regulations adopted by the city in 2019, up to 2 dispensaries can operate in the city, one on each side of the river. Zen Leaf is currently operating on the east side, and this would be the location for the proposed west side dispensary. The proposed dispensary meets the zoning use standards for recreational cannabis dispensaries that are outlined in the staff report. Plan Commission held a public hearing on October 18th, and their discussion focused on pedestrian safety within the parking lot and traffic impacts. The Commission voted 6-2 to recommend approval, subject to installation of safety measures to enhance the safety of pedestrians crossing the main drive parallel to the shopping center building. The applicant has provided a trip generation and traffic assessment, which recommends a striped crosswalk in front of the dispensary. They also noted there's an existing 3-way stop there. The memo also estimates vehicle trips to be generated by the dispensary, and that information is outlined in the staff report. HLR Engineering reviewed the memo on behalf of the city and recommended that trip generation data also be collected from other consumed cannabis locations in order to confirm the trip estimates that are in the memo. However, HLR does not anticipate any need for roadway improvements as a result of this use, given the existing traffic volumes on Prairie and Randall. Representatives from the application are here tonight if there are questions for the applicant.
Thank you very much. Comments from P&D. And before we go forward, this is an existing special use, so comments should be focused around the findings of fact to deal with the special use is appropriate. Are there any comments?
There is, yeah. I don't understand your statement.
It's a special use, so the consideration is on the findings of fact.
Okay, that's what the Plan Commission did. They decided on the findings of fact.
Yes, well.
Yeah. We can go beyond the findings of fact, but that's okay. My question has to do with the findings of fact. Just one comment, Ellen. We got a little spoiled last time we approved a recreational cannabis special use because, we got we were inviting Anthony for dinner. He was here so often, right? And so we really got to know that business, and we had dealt with them for years. I see nothing about this company anywhere. So I'm hoping staff is comfortable with that. And to Mr. Lencioni's point, I see nothing in our packet that will change my mind as I voted last time when it comes to the conformance of the finding of fact E, effect on general welfare. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
The comment?
Yes. Yes. I echo Alderperson P. Leitner's concern. I voted against this the first time. I still don't believe we need this in St. Charles. It's not what our image is about, in my opinion. So I also will be voting no tonight.
Other comments from the committee?
You know, just a quick,
Yes.
Ellen, you said, I think, that the pedestrian issue was addressed, correct?
Their proposal to address the issue is to add a crosswalk.
Okay. And you think from the conversation with Plan Commission that that will satisfy with the two?
Yes,
those
their
involved?
ideas included crosswalk, stop sign, speed bumps. They noted that there already are stop signs at that location, and then their consultant recommended the crosswalk. And then to your question on the ownership, there is a requirement in the code that requires the ownership to have held a license for recreational dispensary elsewhere in the state for at least 1 year, and they do meet that standard. But the applicant is here if you wish to speak further.
Yep, thank you.
Are there any other comments? Looking for motion? Move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion from Todd and a second from Ryan. Could you call the roll?
Marshall,
Yes.
Sakaitis,
No.
Calmaris,
Yes.
Payleitner,
Nope.
Baumgart,
Yes.
Bancroft,
Yes.
Petrilla,
Yes.
Wirball.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 4B, First Street Plaza update.
Here you go. Come in.
Sure. We're waiting for your, okay, hold for a second.
Good evening. Thank you. We're here tonight to present a project status update on the First Street Plaza project. I'm going to begin just by giving a brief overview of how we got to the design point that we are currently at today. We do have a number of members in the audience that are joining us from the First Street Initiative, from the initiative to speak if there are any questions. There's no formal presentation prepared by those group members, but they are here to answer any questions if council should have them once we reach the end of this presentation. The goal of tonight's presentation is to get some direction from City Council on whether or not to proceed with this project given the updates that we are going to provide here this evening. So with that, I would just like to start by going over the point at which we got to the process we are on the design standards. If council will recall, in January of 2021, a survey was posted, and there were almost 1,000 resident responses in regards to what they would like to see on the First Street Plaza project. The first of which is a solar pergola feature. You can see in the chart that the average rating for what the public wanted on that was about a 7.5. The second item was a community art feature rating at an average of 7.1. And then the biggest response total we had was in regards to closing First Street to create a pedestrian walkway. And as you can see from the chart, almost 700 people rated that a 10 in terms of importance. So the design that Peter will go over as soon as I hand the presentation off to him was vetted by the community and had a lot of input to get to this point. So there was almost 1,000 resident responses to guide us to this point. So it has been well vetted by both the committee as well as the residents, and we have solicited as much input as we can get to this point. So the goal of tonight is not to revisit the actual engineering of the design, but to go over all of the options that we have here for the City Council in moving forward with this project. Peter,
Heather,
go
could
over them.
I make a comment real quick?
Yes.
So I've just become the chairman of the committee, which, I'm pretty honored to be part of this committee. I've been with the committee for about 3 years. And I've also had the opportunity, going back to my Plan Commission days, of seeing First Street from where it began, literally just about where it began, to where it is now. So as Heather stated, there are members here. If you'd like to stand, please do. But these members, over the last 3 years, have worked along with our mayor and our former mayor who's on that group, as well as myself and our former chairman, John Hoshide, in raising $2 million+ through both private businesses, some larger, a lot of local ones, some smaller ones, some medium-sized regional businesses as well. And the point being is we've we've gotten to a place where, as Heather was saying, we're heading towards phase 2. We've raised $2 million to get us there. There have been some inflationary issues that have caused the price to go up. So, you know, Peter's going to have a chance to describe in detail a little bit more on what phase 2 is going to be. But tonight would be a good chance for everyone to just chime in on what their thoughts would be to keep this project moving forward. We've had some momentum. We have momentum with the project itself, and we don't want to lose that momentum. So part of the goal, I think, for myself as well as our committee would be to ask the city to keep the project moving with city funds, but at the same time, we're going to continue to raise funds that will go back to the city. Thank you.
Good evening. Well, in preparation for this meeting, I discovered that we last talked about this project publicly on May 24th, 2021, so it's been a little while. At that time, we received approval from you to continue with the First Street project, more specifically with final engineering documents and to complete phase 1 construction. And as you know, we have done both of those. So as Heather mentioned, there are no formal recommendations or actions tonight. We are asking for your feedback and continued support, especially in regards to how we've proposed the schedule and the layout for this project. I will say that the way that we've got it set up right now, and we'll see this a little bit later, if we do want to break ground and have construction going on phase 2 this spring, then that timeline is pretty critical to stay on path at this point in time. So before re-presenting the project design, I thought it was important to remind you that the design team, including the architect, Marty Serena, who is also here in the audience today for some comments and questions if you have for him. But we, as the design team, have continued to develop this project with the feedback from various stakeholders, including the St. Charles Initiative, the Historic Commission, the City of St. Charles Development Review Team, which is a team that includes representatives from each department within the public, within the city, various public comments and local businesses, community, the feedback that Heather was just talking about, and of course you have had the opportunity to hear this several times and comment on the process and design all along. So I'll start by going through a series of images just to get everybody re-familiarized with the project again. If my presentation works here, great. Quite frankly, this is a repeat presentation because the overall concept really hasn't changed much since 2021. It's only been refined. So these first images provide an overview of the entire project. The large eggshell-shaped gathering plaza surrounded by the solar panel-covered trellis and walking paths remain the focus for public gatherings. Walkway and ramp systems allow for pedestrian-friendly access throughout the project site. And the meandering pavement systems from Main Street to Walnut permanently closes First Street and is designed to allow for unobstructed pedestrian passage through the site. It creates natural areas along this path for things like seasonal markets and holiday displays. This aerial shows the reconstruction of the Manor Wall, which is already complete, which was done in phase 1 construction, and how the existing west and east plaza and adjacent restaurant outdoor areas integrate nicely into the design. A little closer look at the egg-shaped gathering plaza reveals the solar panels on the top of the trellis and accessible ramp systems leading down to the fishing platform. This is another image showing the scale of the trellis and opportunities for bike and walking path connectivity, which is playing nicely into the bike and pedestrian plan that we're updating currently as well. The brick floor patterns have been fully developed, and the walking paths and plaza surfaces remain completely ADA accessible, allowing for all to enjoy the plaza. Wayfinding signs will be displayed throughout the plaza and provide opportunities to inform our guests of upcoming events and things like that. The multi-purpose spaces provide for open markets, al fresco dining, and special events. There remains a nice balance of green landscape areas and hard surfaces. There are many opportunities throughout the plaza for standing, gathering, or sitting on built-in benches. And here's a view under the trellis going up from the fishing platform. So to be completely transparent, and as you can hopefully see by the images, the project design and concept really hasn't changed itself. The images haven't changed at all since we presented this back about a year and a half ago. However, before proceeding with the rest of the presentation, I want to make you aware that a couple items that are in the images that I just presented are not currently in the final engineering documents. First, these images show a monument or an art sculpture, or however you'd like to define that. I know that's something we've talked about through this whole process. That monument has not been fully developed, designed, or quite frankly, has been funded at this point in time. However, it may be added at a later date if we so desire. And second, we contemplated for the past several years a water feature. We most recently had that under the west portion of the trellis. That water feature is also not included in the final engineering design documents due to funding and the direction that was given from the St. Charles initiative over the past year. That feature could also potentially be considered in the future, but it's not in the estimates and the costing that we'll show you later this evening. So on to the project schedule and the proposed project moving forward. So going back to May 2022, Phase 1 construction was complete. That mainly suggests that we completed the retaining wall that's up along the river and filled in the old manor hole that we considered. So that space is usable if we'd like to use it at this point in time. Just a few weeks ago, the design team, finished the final engineering documents and completed that part of the program that was approved months ago by you, and submitted those for permits, for permit drawings. So the City of St. Charles Building Department and various teams are reviewing those documents right now. I believe that the first comments were due just this past Friday, and we'll continue to proceed through that process to get these documents ready for an actual permit. So there's one portion that still needs to be complete with this project from a public perspective, and you'll be seeing us quite a bit here, but there's a PUD preliminary plan process that needs to be updated. In essence, it's taking that original PUD for this site and modifying it to recognize this project. So we're here tonight as an informational meeting, but we're in the coming weeks, we'll be in front of Historic Preservation Commission again. We go to the Plan Commission again through this PUD process. We're back to the Planning and Development Committee most likely in January. And then if all moves forward, we will be asking for City Council final approval of this plan also probably in January. As a parallel process, as I mentioned just prior to this, we will be working on those engineering drawings and getting permit drawings ready. And we will be ready to go out to bid on this project most likely at the end of January of 2023. That gives about a month to bid this project with a bid opening at the end of February 2023. This is all for Phase 2, obviously. And after a few weeks of reviewing those bids, maybe doing some value engineering, comparing to the budget, we will be prepared to bring this project forth to City Council for approval of the bids in March of 2023, and starting construction Phase 2 in April, or as soon as the weather allows us to start a project like this in the spring. We are anticipating at this point in time a 9-month construction schedule, and obviously that's made without having a contractor on board yet who will finite that for us. But if you look ahead to that, that gets us to about this time next year where we could potentially, at least the schedule, the way we've got it proposed tonight, have a ribbon cutting at this point in time next year. So on to the project costs, and we've broken this slide into 2 phases. Phase 1 is above the line there, and Phase 2 is below. Phase 1 is complete. Those dollars have in essence been spent. So it costs about just over $2 million for the site acquisition of the project, the design, and the construction costs for phase one. We received several grants, and the First Street Initiative has raised money that totaled just about $800,000. So the net difference there is the $1.248 million that the city has paid for phase one to this date. Phase two is everything that is left on the project. That includes the plaza construction and construction management for the project, in total of $3.26 million. That is an updated number from when we presented this back 18 months ago, and I'll say that that's about an $800,000 difference, added difference to the project since that time. As we all know, the environment is a lot different. We purposely did conservative, updated budget numbers at this point in time, including 8% inflation factors, because that's what's been thrown around out there at this point in time. Hopefully those numbers will come down when we bid this project. 15% contingencies on top of that, so we feel like that's a conservative number, but it's also a really tough market to do a cost estimate like this. So at this point in time for phase two, the initiative has pledged for phase two $671,000 roughly for this phase two project, which leaves a net balance of $2.6 million to complete the project. That will either need to be funded by the city, would be needed to be funded by additional donations or additional grants. So with that, our team will open up for questions, comments, and feedback, but I know before we start doing that, the mayor would like to provide some comments.
Thank you, Peter. I think Ed did a really great job at saying a lot of what I wanted to say, but I just wanted to make a point to say that, you know, public-private partnerships, this is something we embarked on a couple of years ago, and it's a great example how cities can engage the public and residents for a common goal. And so through this is something that I feel like through the process of the last 4 years, we've had great community support, and it's something that's a great example to other communities. We've used other communities as an example for this type of partnership. So when we talk about fundraising, I do want to point out some of the partners in the room here. It's Marty Serena is our architect, and he's worked with us for the last 2.5 years and been very committed to this process. Ray Rogina, Mark Kanan are both here. Julie Chrisman from the Community Foundation has been a great support. I know Conrad Hurst is here and Tom Russi. I don't think I missed anyone on the committee, and then of course Ed, and the work that John Hoscheid's done over the last couple of years. All of these individuals, if you take a look at the donor list you have today, I mean, there's over 60 businesses and residents that have committed to this project and committed to certain things in this project. So besides the resident survey and the donors and what we've done, I mean, we've done this as completely voluntary in terms of elected officials and volunteers in the community without a professional fundraiser. And that goes to show that this project is something that the community really, really wants. I've heard council members and I've heard the community say, you know, this downtown has been a gem of our downtown and the heart of the city. And I think it's a great opportunity for us tonight to talk about this project and get it to completion in a phase where we don't interrupt businesses and we really can give something back to the residents that they have commented on and said that they're very happy with. And it's been a great, I think, energy to our city in the last couple of years. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Lencioni now for the rest of the meeting.
Comment and feedback from the committee?
Just, Peter, if you wouldn't mind, I have down that we talked about this in February, so not quite a year and a half ago. I mean, quite extensively. We talked about it at our retreat.
At the retreat. I guess that's a public meeting. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I meant
yeah.
committee meeting.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Because we covered all these bases. You know, we talked about how we need to, you know, finish some of it anyway because we have the commitment and we don't want to, right? I think, Todd, you were the one that made that point. And we were still, at that time, fuzzy on numbers, you know, and we'd hope to get, you know, updates on that. But, okay, I just wanted to make that clear, that we did talk about it. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. Extensively in February.
Yes, I have a couple comments. There's no doubt that prices are going to continue to go up. And with that being said, I also don't want, interruption for businesses. So whatever, obviously as we discuss this further, I just want to be cognizant of business interruption. I want to be cognizant of just finding a way to get the foundation, the groundwork, the infrastructure underneath to make it to where at least the surface is all closed up and can be utilized by the public. This is a very important part of the downtown area. It is it has been a gathering spot on the other side of First Street. Now we need to make sure that this side is also a gathering point. So I just want to make sure that we work together to try to find a way to get this funded. Obviously being fiscally responsible, but find a way to get it funded.
Other comments, feedback? Go ahead, Alderman Warbaugh.
So I just have some questions for staff just to get some history on this project. First of all, thank you to everyone on the initiative for what you did as far as fundraising and bringing in the money. So thank you so much for doing that. This project, when it first started, what was the budgeted amount back? Was it $4 million? Was that the original budget?
So, yes, that included, it was about $3 million for construction, and then the roughly $1 million for the purchase of the property, for a total of $4 million.
Okay, and then the city has committed $1.4 million. Was that their commitment? It was $1 million to buy the property, and then $400,000 to fill the hole. Was that?
You have those right there. Can you confirm that?
Thanks. Yeah, as Pete mentioned on the other slide, the net cost to the city for Phase 1, including acquisition and filling the hole, was $1.2 million.
So is there any money left from that phase from the city side? Is there $200,000 left, or what is left of that amount?
So the project was completed by the city. So the grants and donations given through the initiative helped supplement the Phase 1 funding. So essentially, $1.2 million is the net city cost, as Pete showed in that slide to date. And to complete the project going forward, you're looking at that $3.2 million number, and then plus an additional $700,000, give or take, what the initiative is going to raise, or funds they've already had committed to the project for the net city cost around $2.6 million.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Get up on the screen.
Sure. Yeah. So that makes sense. There you go.
So I guess because I'm looking at the October 9th, 2020 memo, and it's got a nice detailed list of costs and what money's, I know it's dated, but it looks like the total cost was $4 million, $600,000 from Exelon, $400,000 from the city, and then $1 million budgeted to build the river wall and fill the hole. So from that amount, you said we spent $1.2 million. So you're saying what is left then from our side, the public side, to contribute to furthering this project?
I think we're just saying things a little bit differently. It's essentially because the funds were given to the city paid out the $2 million for Phase 1, received $800,000 in grants and donations from the initiative, and that was the city paid out the full cost of the project, because essentially it's the city project with the initiative turning over the grants and the donations, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And maybe a different way to phrase it is the city committed to make sure that Phase 1 was finalized at that cost. It wasn't a certain dollar amount that was funded. So once that Phase 1 was finished at the $1.248 million, the city's obligation was complete at that point. So there isn't a remaining balance or reserve that we're still tapping into to fund this project.
Got it. So our obligation as a city is complete. So what we're being asked for is to provide the additional $2.5 million. Is that what we're being asked at this point?
Yeah, basically, as Peter said, the cost to complete the project at this point, given the contingency and inflation factors built in, which totals to about $500,000, is roughly the $2.6 million.
And then are we looking to do this all at once? Because for me, I kind of echo a little bit of what Steve's comments are as far as addressing maybe just the street, enhancing the street with the brick pavers, cleaning that up so it looks presentable. You know, when you go down First Street, I don't know if you have the pictures on there or not, but when you go down First Street and you get to the end and you make a left to go into the garage, it would be nice to see like a half moon, a half circle, so that cars can navigate around and turn back around and go south or drop people off. Is that an option, or is that too late to modify that?
So that is an option we considered, and Marty, you can help me out with this one. We spent months on trying to do just that and get a turnaround at that end of the project right there in front of the Walnut parking garage, and we couldn't get any of the radiuses to work. It's just too narrow. So we did look at that, and we ran into a dead end just because of the space that's available there. So one thing that I do, you know, that I should have been a little bit more crystal clear about is that the way we proposed this schedule tonight is that it is all to be done in one phase. So the rest and the remainder of the project is one single phase. We've heard and we contemplated that, you know, a question might come up about phasing the rest of the project. So in essence, a 2A, a 2B, a 2C, how many phases we can slice into this project. So some things to maybe consider about phasing the rest of the project are right on this slide. So first off, and I think it's been mentioned right now, additional costs. You know, we're dealing with some inflationary costs now that are 8% a year. Hopefully that starts to settle down, but if this goes into 2 or 3 years of phasing, then you're going to continue to get additional increases in costs for the project, for the total project. And historically speaking, you know, we generally budget before this year 2 to 3% a year just for inflationary costs on construction. So you can, you know, you start to see how it adds up quickly. You also, in regards to cost, you lose kind of that economy of scale. So at this point in time, the rest of the project is a pretty significant cost of project, and it'll attract some good contractors to do this work. If you start to split it up, that value that economy of scale value decreases a little bit. No doubt that phasing additional phases to this project will add time. So it's just, you know, it wouldn't be able to be phased in a single year. You would be on multiple years, multiple bids, multiple general contractors, and multiple mobilizations, and quite frankly, multiple disruption for the city, for the businesses in that area. The sequence of phasing also is tricky. You know, we've talked internally a lot about the way you can phase this project, and some think that, you know, phasing from left to right or east to west. I've heard, let's build the egg-shaped plaza first, but forget about First Street. And I'll show you a map here soon, but, you know, it's very difficult to do that because, quite frankly, that egg, and I've got an overlay. You know what, I'll just go to that right now. I've got an overlay drawing here, and you can see that egg portion of the project, it's hard to tell in the design drawings, but it goes to about the midpoint of First Street. So it's not as easy as designing the egg and building the egg without disrupting First Street. And you end up with a whole bunch of temporary conditions that way, in regards to elevations.
Could you build the without all of the, you know, the trellis and the pergola and all that stuff? Could you do all of that and leave that off for at a later point?
Yeah. So from a constructability standpoint, that's exactly what we would recommend: is build from ground up or underground up. So let phase 2A might be build everything up to grade, and then 2C might be all of those amenities that are above grade. But the problem with that is that most of the donated dollars for this project were associated with the parts of the project that are above grade, the things that people want to see, benches and trellises and landscape and those type of things. So I think that you start to lose perhaps some of those donated dollars for it, or you wouldn't be able to spend those donated dollars until that phase 2B. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I got you. So,
Hang on one second.
No, that was just a comment that Peter, there are donated dollars for specifically the pergola, specifically pieces. And when you start working with donors, Julie Chrisman can tell you, that becomes really tricky because it's restricted dollars. And so we are trying to be good stewards of the money that people have given us for the intent that they want.
okay. So my next question is more for the initiative. Is the goal to continue to fundraise? Maybe Ed, maybe this is to fundraise, and what do you see are the challenges that are kind of hanging this up? Where are you reaching your goals, or you find it challenging?
I wouldn't say that we're not reaching our goals. The challenges that we have, and we'll continue to have, but we'll also have the opportunity to reach other people for donated money, is that some of the larger chunks of money that have been raised by larger corporations and larger businesses, it's not that we're running out, but we have to continue to go back to this list of donors and kind of weed through the ones that have donated and still get back to the others that have not donated yet. So it gets a little tricky, but at the same time, it's a little time consuming. But, you know, again, this group has done a terrific job over the last 3 years, mind you, during COVID, to raise the funds that they have raised, and our goal is to continue to do that as we move along.
Yeah, so for me, I like the project. I don't have an issue completing the project. For me, it's about funding. To me, it's about priorities. Where are our priorities? I mean, I have constituents that ask about their streets. We're at a 40 or 50-year replacement cycle. So, it's hard for me to justify spending $2.5 million when I have roads that need replacement or sidewalks or things of that nature. So I certainly want to help in some way to move it forward. But for me, I think the focus, I'd like to know what would it cost to just work on the street, on the surface. I think that would be the most beneficial to the businesses, but that's just my opinion on that. I think the initiative's doing a great job, and I think if they just continue on, we're only, 2 years? How many years?
I'd say almost 3 now.
About 3 years? I mean, do you see other opportunities if you continue? Okay.
Yeah, we're going to continue.
So that's my reservation, and then I ask myself, is it the right time with inflation? Is it, and I'm just making it up, is it the right time to pay $10 a brick instead of $2 a brick? I don't know the answer to that question, but so those are things I'm thinking about. So for me, the focus is really maybe just getting a cost on First Street. What would it cost to do First Street with the brick pavers and then the actual plaza itself? And then maybe there's another phase after that. That's just my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Alderman Warble. Were there other comments? Were you looking to poll City Council? Oh, wait. Alderman Solkowski.
I do appreciate what the initiative have done. They raised a lot of money. But I remember when we had a meeting years ago that we were told that if the city provided our part of the financing and did the first phase, which we did, the initiative would raise the rest of the money. And no taxpayers' money would be involved in this. But now I see we're short $2.5 million. And my first question is, where's this money going to come from? I don't remember budgeting it for this year or next year.
Well, I'll let Bill answer that, but what I will add is, again, over the years, we've had an extremely healthy reserve fund. Our ordinance supplies us to be at 25%. Let me finish, please. And we've always been floating around 30 to even 34, 35%. So I've been a strong proponent of a healthy reserve fund. We have it, and I just believe this is an opportunity to give back to the community. So.
Okay, well, at this $2.5 million, I have to disagree with that. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of roads could be fixed. I've driven this town. There are roads and curbs and sidewalks that need to be fixed that are past their life. I like the project. I think it's a great idea. I just don't know where the money's going to come from. I don't want to take reserves. If we're going to do that, then we should take money from reserves to do the streets and the sidewalks and the curbs too at the same time.
Sure, I can just mention one thing to that. I think as I mentioned in a previous meeting, we've been setting aside some monies in our capital projects fund over the last couple of years, beginning with last year, based on some of the sort of one-time revenues that we got with some of the increases in the ongoing revenue sources, as well as the closeout of a couple of funds. So we've been able to set aside monies last year and in the current fiscal year, and the hope is that we're going to continue to be able to do that to sort of fund these one-time capital funds. So just to answer your question, it wouldn't necessarily come out of reserves. We've been trying to set aside monies over the last 8 months, 10 months for various capital projects that may come up from time to time.
Those are my comments. I still think that there are other things that need priority besides this.
Alderman Baker.
So just a few observations. First, on construction costs, what we're seeing is the construction cost market in my job has sort of levelized. And we don't know that we're going to see anything dramatic in terms of decreases next year, but it's going to flatten out. And so we have an opportunity now next year to get this complete, because it's not going to go down much past where it goes next year. So from a construction cost standpoint, that's one thing. The second thing is, I really respect the work that Peter and team have done on preparing that budget. You know, my experience is those numbers get a lot better as you bid them out. And is there a harm in going out to bid?
And that's essentially what we were asking council for this evening, that we can still choose not to proceed once those numbers do go out to bid and we see where they fall.
So if $2.5 million becomes 1.8, it becomes a different decision. If it becomes less than that, if $2.5 million becomes $4 million, it becomes a different decision. So to me, it looks like, I mean, my opinion is I think staff should go out and get bids so we know what we're talking about.
Real quick, Ms. Squire, can you tell us what would, because right now we're looking for comment, so how would this entire process go, and at what point would there be, you know, formal support of a project and spending money?
Sure. So at this point, we're looking for the direction, because the pieces that we need to fulfill in order to get to the point of bidding involve things like PUD, going to historic, going to plan commission, coming back before this committee, and then ultimately going out to bid. So we want to make sure that council is at least supportive of that route before we take all those steps. And then at that point, there would be preliminary and final approvals along the way throughout those processes at P&D, at plan commission, and then ultimately the bids at city council once we bid those out in February and March.
So really, as we're here making comment, you want to hear, do we support nothing?
Correct.
Should we go forward?
Yes.
And then ask for recommendations actual votes from us at phasing? And those would be the right place to make, you know, proposed amendments or anything like that?
Correct.
Okay.
Heather, when we talked about this in February, it was mentioned that this would be 2 years of budget. Is that still the plan?
So, you know, I did talk to Bill a little bit about that, and I don't know, Bill, you want to maybe explain the mechanism behind that? Essentially, how it would end up falling is into one single budget year, but because the funds have been allotted and pushed into that capital project fund, it doesn't impact our operational budget the same way, and it doesn't essentially matter splitting it over 2 budget years. But I can have Bill give you the technicalities on it.
Sure. I mean, Heather covered it pretty well there, but essentially because construction really wouldn't start earliest April of 2023, there really wouldn't be a lot of work done in April. So the project, in terms of its full scope, would occur in the next fiscal year. So we can still go through our processes that we've been doing of analyzing our budget, how we're doing, transferring monies to our various capital funds, but essentially the expense occurs when the work is done, so we would have to, essentially, it's basically all take place in one fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. And also, I'm looking at the minutes from February for what we've already, so we're not, you know, rehashing too much. But, and that was one of the points, was it was going to be budgeted over 2 years. And there was a talk of phasing, but we're eliminating that now, correct? There's just 2 phases now.
As staff talked about that, we did look to see if there were options to do that, but we are going to lose so much in terms of mobilization, in terms of breaking up the contracts, in terms of inflation. It was not going to be cost effective, so that's the reason we're not recommending that be split into phases, in addition to the fact that we had some specific donations for that I'll call above ground items that would end up being restricted. So by nature of that, we're going to have to raise more money to accomplish the exact same project by way of also not fulfilling some of the donors' wishes that they donated for.
Okay, and you know, and to quote Mark, who's here, I mean, his explanation was great when this all started. And he said, you know, the city perhaps will plant the tree, and the initiative will decorate that tree. How much more do we have to do to plant the tree? What is, you know, I think in our conversation in February, that was the street. You know, that was part of the public works part of it versus the initiative. So I'm wondering if we can at least get an idea what that is. You know, what is tree versus decorating the tree.
I remember those comments. I wasn't directly engaged with that dialogue, but you know, if I could take a shot at it, I think that the Public Works project would be everything up until you know, on the surface, and everything above the surface would be the decoration.
Okay.
Do we have that breakdown in costs? No, we haven't done that exercise yet, right. But that kind of gets to your point about phasing. The second phase, breaking that into two separate phases, okay. and then having different funding for each one of those.
Okay.
Well, but that's not what we have proposed tonight.
Got it. And like I communicated in February, I haven't changed my mind much. I'm okay with initially half that amount, the city being responsible for. And I'm also okay with the city, now, you know, what it costs, I don't know, is doing the First Street piece. You know, getting that done, getting the curbs smoothed out, getting the, and then the actual, you know, plaza area is, you know, more part of decorating the tree than the tree. Anyway, that's just where I stand right now, same as I did in February. Thanks.
Heather,
I'm sorry.
Can I ask you one question? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you had mentioned that there's a number of communities that have funded this themselves, the city.
I think from a philosophical standpoint, this is pretty typical that a city would wrap this into their budget. I don't think there's, you know, it's a philosophy question at this point, but it is certainly going to be publicly owned space. So for the city to actually fund that project makes as much sense as trying to raise donations.
Okay, thank you.
The other point I just want to make real quick, too, is that, you know, as staff, as we were looking at this and phasing, and one of the things that we did consider, to Alderman Weber's point, was making sure that we were doing this in the most efficient and least impactful way. Certainly outdoor dining has become a huge thing with the pandemic and even post-pandemic. If I could say post-pandemic at this point, but because of the construction schedule being about 9 months, we know that this is going to be an interruption to the businesses and the entire city while we're doing it. So rather than trying to split this over 2 years and interrupting major dining, outdoor dining seasons, outdoor weather seasons for our residents, wanted to try to minimize that and make this as efficient as possible. So that was another consideration as we were talking about phasing and potentially breaking this project into pieces.
And do, as I understand looking at the diagram, I mean, the outdoor dining would be, say, Altar Brewery is having part of the street, maybe not this picture, but the other one, where the street's involved. And La Mesa also wants to have street dining, what would once be First Street dining. So.
And it wouldn't just be the impact to the actual businesses that have the outdoor dining there, but even just access to those. Certainly by having major construction occurring right there, just the pedestrian access is going to be impactful to the businesses that are in that area.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one more question. Could, depending on what we do here in when the bids come in, could we have, with the initiative, let's say we pay for some of this or all of it or whatever it turns out to be, could the initiative reimburse or continue to raise money to give some of that back to the city? Is that an option?
That was definitely a conversation that we had at the last initiative meeting, and I think that is their goal. I think they would absolutely love to hand the city a check for 100% of the project, and I believe all of the fundraising efforts will continue past, even if the city decides to fund this project. I know that the contributions that have been made and the members of the initiative are very excited about this project and really have taken ownership of trying to get this completed, and I think they're working diligently, given that this is not a full-time endeavor for them.
Heather, may I add one comment, please? Brian, good question, because so the initiative isn't going away. It's still going to look at other projects, and before this project, they assessed what projects to select. So this became the first project. There's still a fund set up, so people can continue to give on an annual basis, like that may be something I do, and it goes into the fund and just designated to this project. So Peter's group's going to have to keep it up and keep it pretty, and that's going to go on forever, just like we do any other city project. So there will be funds in there from people that will continue to generate and pay for some of the things that the city would naturally, normally have to pay for. So it's not like an ever, it can continue in perpetuity.
Okay. And then two more questions and I'm done. Is there anything that Public Works can do as far as this project to mitigate any of the costs, or are you just want to contract it out completely 100%? Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but... Okay, all right. And then last, I'm just asking, when you get the bids, will it have a breakdown of just the street and the plaza, and then with all the decorations? Will it be broken down enough so that if we choose to, we can say, hey, you know what, we're comfortable with this piece, but not all of it, or maybe we'll do all of it, depending on the cost, of course.
Yes and no. I think we could build that into the bid, so I can take a stab at the more detailed you get with that, the less interest you get from some bidders sometimes, as they're providing all sorts of information and breakdowns. But we will have line item costs for every bit of this project that we could, even after the bids are open, take those schedule values and create our own.
Okay.
You know, what if we just did the street, for example, or the so we will have a lot of that background information that we can use to model any scenario we want.
Okay. And then as far as that half circle, you're saying that can't happen there? There's just not enough room to put that half circle on the end of First Street for people to drop people? There's just not enough room for that?
We did study it.
Okay.
And I'd be glad to share some of those attempts if you
okay.
like.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask staff, is it most helpful to pull through committee or people?
Yeah, one more quick question. Do we know how much of the initiative monies aren't tied to, specifics, benches, pergolas?
The breakdown of that, no, I don't have that handy.
Okay.
We do have $671,000 left that is dedicated towards phase 2 of the project, but certainly some of those donations are specific targeted donations.
Right.
I'm happy to provide that information to you.
Is it half? Is it 99%? I'm just curious.
I'd have to we could pull in the morning.
Yeah, I can get that information out to you easily.
Thank you.
So, just from a comfort standpoint, I think it makes a lot of sense to get the bids.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes a lot of sense, Peter, to put pressure on you to say, give us an A and a B. The B is the whole enchilada, and the A is make it look presentable, whatever that means. If A is chosen, I really don't think, I don't think you can take $1 from the initiative. I think if you're not going to complete the project, and I say if we're not going to complete the project and it's not going to come from our funds, I wouldn't be comfortable taking $1 from the initiative. They're basically making donations based on a completed project, and I think that, and again, this isn't meant to be aggressive one way or the other. It's just from a comfort level. I think that if you're going to do an A is on the city, in my own opinion, and that's the way we should look at it.
So before polling, I have a couple questions. Do you have a sense of what timing would be before you come back to P&D or other bodies, with that? What would the timing be for different steps?
So this would
before, for approval.
Yep. So this would be the first. The first step would be to go to Historic Preservation Commission, Plan Commission, and then back to P&D. Essentially, are those all in January?
Okay. Cool. So let's poll, and we always start on this side. So let's go the other way through. And anything you can do to speak to support for any type of phasing, general support, anything like that.
Yeah, thank you. I would definitely support this going out to bid. I don't want to see this, there's such a focal point of downtown, and now that it's the city's property now, I want us to, kind of set an example of, us finishing projects in the city and not to mention, I don't want to miss any, opportunities that having that area finalized will bring to the city. It's one thing to just say, this is the cost of it, that is very important, but obviously there's these ancillary things that come when you finish a project like that, bringing more people into town, bringing more revenue to that area. So definitely in favor of bidding it out, and I don't want to look at that street like that, not looking finished, or the dirt for the next 3 years. I just think that's irresponsible on the part of the city now that it's our property.
Of course, I'm in favor of it. I will add, and I believe the Mayor Vitek said it correctly, COVID had all these bad things, of course, and one of the silver linings was obviously beyond the fact that everybody in the city or in this area enjoyed outdoor dining, but this project's kind of growing with that, and we're kind of ahead of that curve, and we're kind of catching up to it. So it's going to make, as Alderman Weber was just saying, it's going to make the businesses a little bit better, and we're going to provide more public space, and it's going to cap off as was stated earlier, the jewel of downtown St. Charles. So yes, I'm 100% in favor of it.
Two bids, A and B, and let's see what it costs. It comes down to priorities. I mean, if it's reasonable, you know, I'm open to it, but we need to see what the numbers are. So I'm open to it. I think it's going to look great when it's finished. You know, it's unfortunate that things have escalated in costs so quickly. So, but let's see what the numbers are and go from there. So.
No, I agree as well. Two bids, and you know, if the city is going to you know, go past what it has already invested, you know, certainly the street is the priority for me. I would be open to exploring just finishing that and making it look pretty and what have you, presentable, as Alderman Weber mentioned. You know, just get more information. We can talk more about that, and you know, the initiative can continue its work and go from there.
For my comments, I think Alderman Bancroft's comments were important. One, I'm proud that we've been able to raise nearly $1.5 million. Yes, obviously I'd like to see phasing, but I feel, you know, nobody's dying to spend money, but I also believe in responsibility. We've raised a lot of money, which I think is incredibly admirable, to these public-private partners, this project, and I want to see it completed. Based on the way that it looks, you know, all things being reasonable. It's also important that I want to see a scheduling happen so you have the least amount of business impact, and I want to see a specific, you know, attention paid to business impact. If we're going to be doing this right in the middle of, you know, what is now, since everything's, you know, been done, you know, really high density of businesses, and let's make sure that we do a very good job understanding how that impacts them and do it in a way that we impact them as lightly as possible and understand this impact.
So I think going out for bid obviously makes all the sense in the world. Whether you do it as an A and a B, I think you've got to get the real numbers. I'm prepared to approve the project with, you know, the order of magnitude that you're describing in the material here, that number. I do not view it as an either-or roads versus doing this project. I think it's two separate things. If we have a road problem, we got to deal with the road problem. If Peter needs, you know, more funds to do a better job on the road side, then we got to just deal with that. And it shouldn't take away from what I think is an opportunity. And the opportunity is to take private-public money and putting it right into the center of our downtown, and I think that's the place it should be.
I can't comment.
Oh, you can't comment.
Right. Thank you very much.
Sorry to tempt you.
I'm dying inside.
Yeah. Again, I'm all about getting the bids so we know what we're talking about. And the proposal of being a A and a B sounds good, and my 100% I was on board with this when we talked about in February of getting that street done. That's what I think should be the city's priority.
Yeah. No, I am 100% supportive of this initiative in full. So I think we should get back those bids, like mentioned, and like the mayor mentioned earlier, this is one of our jewels. So for me, driving past her every day, drop my kids off at the various businesses in the area, I want to see it finished. I want to bring more tourism and support for our business into our cities. I think it's a great opportunity for it. But let's get the numbers in front of us and then make those decisions when the time is right.
I think it's a great project to do. I still have concerns about the costs, but I'll go along with getting the bids. But if it stands at that number, I cannot support it.
Thank you very much. That concludes that item. So moving on to 4G, recommendation to approve and execute an acceptance resolution for public streets for Anthem Heights subdivision.
Yes. This is a street acceptance for the Anthem Heights subdivision. It's typically a routine item. What's unique in this situation is during the inspection of the streets, staff noted that the slope of the pavement surface in some areas didn't meet city standards, which may inhibit drainage and affect the longevity of the street. So the developer's engineer provided an engineering analysis of the street as constructed, and they felt that it was acceptable and within construction tolerances. There was some back and forth between the city, the developer, and the engineer to reach a resolution. And so what's being proposed is to accept the streets, but with an extended warranty period and application of a pavement treatment product that will enhance the durability of the pavement. At the end of the year, that warranty period, the city would have the ability to re-inspect the condition, determine if any further maintenance or replacement of the surface is necessary, or alternately, we could extend the warranty period as well, based on what we see at that time.
Yeah, I pulled this off this vote, just so you know. I just have a concern with, during our inspection, we noticed the pavement didn't meet our specifications. So why didn't we just tell them to redo it? I mean, I don't believe I've ever seen something like this where they don't do it to code, but yet we're giving them an opportunity to give us a 5-year warranty. But most streets are going to last 5 years regardless of how poorly they're done. So I don't think you want to give a 10 or 15-year guarantee. I can go along with that, but I cannot support giving a 5-year extended warranty and something that we should have just said, you know what, it doesn't meet our code, redo it.
Yeah, and I will say that was our initial response.
Right.
But the developer's engineer provided information to us, and based on that information, we felt that we were willing to allow the extended warranty period to see how it performs and reassess it later. But to your point, would a longer warranty period be more desirable? Yes.
Yes, and that's the only way I would support it is if we have a longer warranty period. But I cannot support accepting the roads, knowing there's a defect already. That's what bothers me. We know according to our end, there's a defect, or according to their end, it's okay. So who has the authority we have the authority, don't we have the authority to tell them hey, redo it? Don't we have that authority?
We do.
Okay.
The issue would be that there's portions that meet our code requirement and portions that don't.
Right, exactly.
So the developer's position is they'll replace the portions that don't to meet the current required standard, and then we'll have sections where it's incomplete and there's patches made. And so our interest with the extended warranty period was to avoid that and see how the pavement performs so we don't have partial replacement. Because ideally, we'd like to have a complete replacement. But based on the inspection, it's not consistent through the subdivision.
Okay, and I understand where you're coming from. I get that. Fine. With that said, give us at least a 10-year warranty on it then. And I could accept that, but I'm not going to accept a 5-year. I won't personally want to accept a 5-year warranty on it. That's not long enough in my opinion.
Russ, what's the recourse? Let's just say hypothetically we say yes to a 5-year or 10-year. What if the developer and the company that did the project is no longer in business? Where's our protection?
So we'll have a bond that'll remain in place for that 5-year period. So we would have the ability at the end of that period, if the developer is unwilling to extend it, that we could pull the bond and essentially replace the surface based on that bond.
Oh, I was going to say, thank you. I'm to Ron's point. I mean, an extension of the extension seems prudent, in my opinion. Do you need to talk to them first to get their thoughts, or can we just amend this?
If the committee would like to make a motion based on the extension, we could then communicate with the developer about what the committee's direction was. And if the developer's not agreeable, we'd bring it back to the committee. Otherwise, we'd bring that forward to the council.
So if you wanted to, Brian, go ahead.
So you're saying making a conditional motion to make it 10 years or whatever we want, and then you go back and ask them, and then it goes to council, or does it come back?
Yes, it would come back to the committee if the developer's unwilling to follow the committee recommendation for the extended period.
In saying that, there's one or two things you can do, is you can make a motion, an amendment to this, to amend it to what you want, or you can make a motion to postpone to the next meeting and take no action until then.
You want to?
I'll do it. Well, actually, Ron, you took this off. Do you want to amend this?
So I'd like to amend the motion to make it a 10-year extended warranty versus the 5-year. So that's my motion, to make it 10-year, accepting the rest of the motion, the rest of the ordinance, except making it 5-year to 10-year.
So how about this? There's just a motion that isn't this on there, and the motion is with a 10-year extension.
Right. Yes.
So that's the motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
And there's a second. Discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Vasquez,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Kulturitis,
Yes.
Calamaris,
Yes. Yes.
P. Lightner,
Yes.
Baumgarten,
Yes.
Bancroft,
Yes.
Trilla,
Yes.
Wirball.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. So that resolves G. So we are to 5, public comment. Name and address for the record, and go ahead and make comment.
Yes, thank you. My name is Mike Canute. I live at 112 North Fifth Avenue, and I am here this evening to speak in opposition to the riverfront proposals for the old police station site in what is becoming and will continue to be a regular occurrence at any city meeting where we have the opportunity to speak and be heard on this subject. The Frontier Development proposal inexplicably remains on the table for further consideration by the City Council, and until it is removed, we will continue to voice the strong opposition of the community to that project. I've spoken to some of you individually about this project, including Mayor Vitek last week after the City Council, and asked why the Frontier proposal is not being taken out of play. And I've yet to receive a good answer to that question. Instead, I was told there may be unintended consequences of such an action, like generally discouraging developers from dealing with the city, or a public misperception of why the proposals were pulled down. In our view, that's unacceptable. If the Frontier Development concept is left open for further consideration, that means that this City Council, or this committee, I should say, possibly even the next City Council following the April election, will potentially try to move that concept forward and work with Kurt Hurst and Frontier Development to make some portion of that concept work. But the community has been overwhelmingly clear in expressing to you that the Frontier proposal cannot happen. The citizens do not want any part of that concept. If you are listening to us, reading your email, and seeing the public comments from online sources that we forward to you regularly, then you must know that we do not want a 164-room hotel, which does not fit that site, and if we're being honest, is bound to fail with a price point starting at $300 a night. We do not want the paved-over riverfront that comes with that project. We do not want access to the riverfront walled off from the community. We do not want the massive amount of traffic that will inevitably be created by that project and will ruin the adjacent neighborhood. And we do not want a valuable asset like city-owned riverfront land given to a developer so he can pursue a fanciful project like Plaza San Carlo. I could go on, but the question remains, why is the Frontier Development proposal not being removed from consideration? Earlier this year, the City Council was presented with 4 proposals in response to the RFC, and it quickly removed 2 of them from consideration, the Flaherty and Collins proposal and the T2 capital proposal. You went from 4 to 2 without much trouble, and it was not part of any meeting agenda. There was no formal motion and no formal vote that I'm aware of to do that. Then just a few weeks ago, in response to the growing public outcry over the Frontier project, the mayor publicly stated that the process would be slowed down and would be reviewed, and she would revisit the process next spring. Again, she apparently has the authority to do that when it's not on a meeting agenda, not subject to any debate or vote. She just took action. And that's what we're demanding right now. Remove the Frontier proposal from further consideration. No more delay. Take it off the table and take your time to review the process and start over. You apparently have the power to do that, Mayor Vitek, so we ask you to be a leader on this issue, listen to your community, and do it. It's what the people want. And I do need to challenge quickly the suggestion that there is both support for and opposition to the Frontier proposal. We know that the mayor and the city council have seen a small handful of emails and public comments from individuals who purport to be in favor of the Frontier proposal. But we see almost no support in the public record for the Frontier concept. The materials we made part of the public record at the October 10th meeting contained 253 comments in opposition to the proposal and only 7 in favor. That's not even close. And the opposition continues to grow. I stand here today as part of a group that refer to ourselves as the Citizens for Responsible Development. We are organized. We have over 1,300 signatures on our petition, and that's continuing to grow. In fact, minutes before this meeting, there were 3 or 4 more added. We have a website. You may have seen our yard signs around town. We actually have to put in an order for more because there is a demand for them. There is support for our cause. Meetings are happening. People are contacting us and asking us to help. In fact, they want to donate money to oppose the Frontier debacle, and we are just getting started. It's clear there is nothing equivalent in the form of support coming from Mr. Hurst and Frontier. So it's time to take it down. End the division caused by Frontier Development's concept. If you do not, then that can only be construed as a tacit endorsement of it, and we will press forward with our opposition even more fervently. Mr. Hurst is here tonight. If he were truly the good neighbor he claims to be, he would take action himself, remove that proposal, that controversial idea from further consideration, given the clear public rejection of it, and remove the awkward position then that this committee and the mayor is in with that proposal just languishing out there. But he is not accountable to the people. You all are, as is the mayor, and as your voters, we want the Frontier Development proposal pulled down and removed from further consideration, and we ask you to please respond accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. State your name and address for the record.
Yeah, I live upstream in Elgin. Do you want my street address in Elgin?
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay, Gary Swick, 370 Congdon Avenue in Elgin, Illinois. All right, I'm here representing Friends of the Fox River tonight, and I'm indirectly speaking about that project that was just spoken about, and I appreciate your time, and I'm here because it's planning and zoning. It's essential for planners to understand and appreciate the real value of the Fox River to your community. We are requesting that you consider your impact upon and with the Fox River in all of your decision-making. A guiding principle that I follow is offered by Aldo Leopold, who said, "We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we begin to use it with love and respect." A couple of years ago, I was standing at the corner waiting to go to the Arcada Theater, and I was behind two couples, and one guy said to the other one, "Man, Schaumburg is so cool. You have so many restaurants, all these multi-level buildings mixing residence and business, and you have event centers." And the Schaumburg guy turned to me and goes, "You have a river." And river towns are really special. You can't make them. This town was founded because there was a river here. So they were important 200 years ago. That's why all the communities are on the Fox River, and they're maybe even more valuable today. A quick history lesson. The Fox River was created 15,000 years ago by a glacier melting. It's probably 300 feet deep, right where we were. After that all completely receded, Native peoples lived here for 10,000 years in harmony because it was a resource-rich area. Explorers and traders probably 500 years ago were here and using the land, getting commodities, reporting back home about how great it was. And our towns were founded about 200 years ago at this time, and it took only about 100 years to almost kill the river by damming it and draining wetlands and dumping into it. But the last 50 years, there's been really concentrated work, starting in the federal government with the whole suite of Clean Water Act, et cetera. And for 50 years, many groups have been working to restore the river. And today, we can be really proud that we have a really healthy river. It's safe to bathe in it. All the fish are safe that are in it, and it's an incredible recreational resource, and it's thriving, but it's threatened every day by past and present developments. And it's not just a river. Because it was formed by a glacier, it has some very unique qualities. We have really rare ecosystems that occur almost nowhere else in the state. Fens and bogs. We have all the deep water glacial lakes that are in the state. And along with that comes an incredible diversity of aquatic and terrestrial habitats. We have an incredible diversity of fish and mussel species, even though we have continued degradation, and we have the whole array from bees to bald eagles that are here. The 200-mile-long Fox River provides drinking water for 300,000 residents upstream and downstream of here. It accepts wastewater from 1 million residents and provides recreational opportunities for locals and visiting paddlers, power boaters, anglers, cyclists, hikers, and general nature lovers that are here. And no single community owns the river. It's a shared commodity, not a commodity. It's a shared resource that we have. Of the 220 miles, 3 of it is in St. Charles, and it takes about 2 hours for the water to travel that 3 miles. So this is a small portion, but it's very important, and St. Charles contributes an average of 5 million gallons a day of treated sewage and an unmeasurable amount of untreated sewage through runoff. But for many years, over 100 years, communities had their back to the river. That's where they loaded the railroad, that's where they dumped their waste. You know, there's pictures of St. Charles where every pier had an outhouse on it because we didn't have indoor plumbing, but that's how it was. But now we're turning to the river to celebrate it. Every community is, and creating great spaces. Most communities are welcoming public access to the river. The riverfront offers many opportunities for enjoyment through passive and active recreation, along with economic opportunities. The riverfront should be available for the entire community and its visitors to directly connect to the river. It should feature green spaces that provide ecosystem services. It should not be dominated by private enterprises, excluding the majority of the community. It should not block views with multi-level buildings and be dominated by impervious pavement and rooftops. A community's land uses should fit its natural and cultural landscape. Riverfront property should have special considerations and restrictions as guidance, and that's one thing Friends of the Fox would like to work with every community to rethink their riverfront, and maybe there should be special considerations with that. They are very valuable public resource. And it should also be considered that it's likely that most Fox River communities will be experiencing the removal of their dam in the very, very near future. This will physically alter the riverfront above the dam and provide significant attraction to new river uses. You can build a restaurant nearly everywhere, but you only have river access in one place. The fabulous Fox River Trail will bring many new visitors to our riverfront communities. This will be a grand economic opportunity that Kane County has aggressively recognized. Kane County just set aside $1.2 million just for the water trail within the county. Many cities are providing spectacular examples of appropriate and successful designs to blend many riverfront uses that protect the natural resources while generating opportunities for economic development. We encourage St. Charles and every other Fox River community to pause on the temptation to develop riverfront properties with buildings that benefit few and provide limited revenue. Friends of the Fox River encourages you to embrace the value of a thriving Fox River. It is a very special natural and cultural resource that is an asset to this community. Consider establishing special use guidelines on your riverfront that appropriately protect and restore the resource. Don't waste through haste a wonderful opportunity for your community. Plan cautiously and wisely for the future, and I look forward to coming back and heralding some of your projects and telling you you really are the pride of the Fox. Thank you.
Hey, remember name and phone number for the record.
Hello.
Address.
Name and address.
Name and address. We don't need your phone number. Came out. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Got it. My name is Paul McMahon. I live at 3rd Avenue in Chestnut, and I also am a member of the Citizens for Responsible Development. The mayor has told us the developers' proposals include intriguing concepts that warrant further evaluation. We do not want the council to only review these 2 concepts offered so far. We believe both proposals need to be removed from consideration as they violate the city ordinances, the city request for proposal, the RFP, the comprehensive plan, and the precepts of the Historic Commission that define the historic character of St. Charles. The Vegas-style frontier plan is the most egregious offering. Knowing that you'll be reviewing these proposals in the next few months, and these 2 proposals and other considerations, we're requesting the council members and the mayor to take a pledge to pledge to the city council a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. Number 1, we know removing trees and covering the green space with 85,000 square feet of concrete will harm the river. We know tearing down 2 historic landmark buildings, including the original City Hall, built in 1892, will harm the historic character of our town. Number 3, we know the Frontier Convention Hotel will bring a massive amount of traffic to Main Street at Riverside Avenue and introduces unsafe traffic into the residential neighborhoods. We know this traffic will harm all St. Charles residences. We know the Frontier proposal only is requiring a $20 million in taxpayer funding, according to his narrative. And the reason is to pay for a reasonable rate of return. This $20 million to guarantee a developer's profit will harm St. Charles taxpayers and schools that are legitimately dependent on city tax dollars. We know giving away 4 acres of prime riverfront property, publicly owned land, to a developer, a private developer, will harm all residents and taxpayers. We know the RFP states specifically, no single building shall stand out or overpower the view or the natural landscape of the valley. We know this frontier complex will overpower the surroundings and obstruct public access to the riverfront. This obstruction and privatization will harm residents, bicyclists, and visitors alike. So, to all our city representatives, during your reconsideration process, please pledge to do no harm. We think the developments do harm the river, they harm the historic district, they harm the residents with massive unsafe traffic, they harm the taxpayers with massive tax dollar giveaway, they harm the resident taxpayers with the massive public land giveaway, and finally they harm all residents' access to the river. Our group, Citizens for Responsible Development, is a combination of new residents as well as long-term residents. We all know April 4th is election day. I've been here 40 years, but there's people that have been here 2 years that we all agree, and we're signing, to the point was made earlier, there's 1,300 signatures that agree with our opposition. We're requesting you remove both of these hastily thought-out proposals and reissue the RFP to only consider bids that comply with the new RFP using Park District and citizen input. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Bob Snodgrass. I live at 300 Delnor Avenue in St. Charles. And my wife and I have lived here for 43 years together. I've seen a lot of really great development in the city and a lot of really good things. This project at the riverfront is not one of them. I want to thank you folks for all the work that you do. 199 pages for the detail from tonight. I just want to say that up front. It's a lot. This is the approved comprehensive plan that was posted on the city website. It was approved in August 2020. I'm going to read the first 5 bullets from that. Transition from downtown core to parks, recreational areas to the north. Riverfront open, green, accessible. Mixed use, commercial, fronting on active streets with riverfront open space. connections to recreational uses and trails. Those are the top 5 things on your bullet point. How many people read beyond the bullet points into the detail on these kinds of things? From the request for concept proposals from the city, it was sent out in 2022, March 15th. That's when they were due, I should say. On the 3rd page, it talks about site conditions. Phase 1 environmental site assessment will need to be performed to understand the current environmental conditions and the potential cost and scope of any remediation. Additionally, a geotechnical analysis is needed to understand the soil structure and bedrock depths of the site. And it further goes on to state a number of other things, including utilities and all the challenges there. It also talks about special use areas. It omits anything about traffic, anything about the fire department across the street, and the potential impact to safety. No studies have been done on that. Based on that, I think that this whole project ought to be removed, both plans rejected, and the city reconsider a resubmission of this to get us to a point where we've got prudent and responsible development in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Greg Taylor, 211 South 3rd Avenue. People enjoy and love St. Charles now because it's still quaint, and because, as the gentleman put it so well, because of the river and the easy access to it, because of the parks, because of the green spaces, and yes, also because of the entertainment and restaurant scenes too. These are our greatest assets. The future development of the old police station site should build upon and enhance these assets. The old police station site is a prime real estate. The future development of that site should self-finance, compensate the city for the land, build upon the assets I previously mentioned, and be something, of course, we all can be proud of. I don't feel that either of the 2 current concept proposals meet these standards. The mayor and the city council have a great chance to show leadership here by pulling both of the concepts from consideration now, reissuing the request for concepts, while taking into account the huge amount of public input that they have received on this site. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eileen Canute, and I live at 112 North 5th Avenue. I am part of a growing group of citizens who find the frontier development proposal for the riverfront to be completely irresponsible, fiscally, environmentally, aesthetically, and blatant in how it ignores the adjacent neighborhood and the bike path that runs through it. Even more outrageous is that Frontier wants us to just give them this valuable land to develop. We cannot leave this on the table in its current form to discuss at a later date. It's simply too risky for us, the voters and the taxpayers of St. Charles. Too big, too dense, too dangerous, too ostentatious, too much cement, too expensive, and too brazen in the demand for the city and taxpayers to just hand over this valuable land for their mammoth project are just some of the over 250 counted comments regarding the Frontier Development Project, and they continue to come in. Mayor Vitek ran for office on the platform that she would listen to the residents of St. Charles, especially concerning development projects. To quote, "We need residents' feedback and making them feel they are part of the community. We are giving you and your city council our fervent feedback regarding this development. Please do not ignore us as we ask you to remove this project in its current form because there's just too much wrong with it. We have too much to lose." The Citizens for Responsible Development have 1,300 plus residents in opposition to the Frontier Development Project. The momentum is growing. More and more residents from our community are saying they do not want this project to move forward
Do not give away our public land. Please take this proposal off the table in its current form. Listen to your constituents, because we are only going to get louder. You have a unique opportunity with this property to create a legacy for yourselves that current and future residents will thank you for. Take your time and get it right. Listen to the community. Thank you.
Diane Thornton, 802 South 10th Avenue. I don't like public speaking, but I've been before this committee before because Frontier Development wanted to build a massive structure, and they wanted the city to vacate property and give it to them and say, here you go. We're going to close these streets. We're going to give you this property. And they're doing it again because, again, they can't afford not to. Well, if they can't afford to build something without being given a property and $20 million, then they have no business bidding. Also, I've not seen anything that says there's been a study of what is that property worth, what it can handle as far as weight, infrastructure, water, traffic, things like that. So we really need to take a close look at this before we send it out for bid again and figure out what's the best use of this property. So please consider that.
Thank you, Ms.
My name is Martha Goss, and I live at 211 South 3rd Avenue. In addition to what this gentleman from the Friends of the Fox River said, I believe that it's time for the city to revisit the CBD1 zoning, especially as it relates to properties that are right on the river. I don't think it's appropriate for a 4-story building to be built anywhere along the riverfront. I think you've heard a lot of feedback about the First Street development. People are happy that it's successful, but there's also the buts, which is that it's a wall that prevents anybody from looking down onto the river. And I don't want that repeated on the east side of the river. I urge you to review that CBD1 zoning as it relates to properties that are right along the riverfront. I was at the meeting at the Baker where you were looking for community feedback for the future of St. Charles. And one of the points that came up in every single subgroup was access to the river. And that included views to the river from right now the hillsides that feed the river. And so I don't think, just like what this gentleman was saying, that tall buildings belong right along the riverfront. And it's one of the things also that one of the other speakers talked about, that people come to St. Charles because there is that sense of openness. When they're at the river, like Mount St. Mary Park, Potawatomi Park, portions of downtown, you can look across and you can see up the hill. You can see the trees. And that's something that's beautiful. It would be terrible to just take that away. That was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Same address. I have a couple comments about what...
Hang on, state your name though, so for the record.
Paul McMahon, 3rd Avenue and Chestnut.
Thank you.
There's two issues, two final questions. I'm seeing what you're doing at First Street, and I think the way it's finishing is really nice. The green space is good. It will be a focal point for St. Charles. That almost makes what Frontier is proposing with the 85,000 square feet of concrete redundant. It almost makes it a moot point because you've already done a very nice job at First Street. What I think the police station site needs is to remain natural, remain in as much a natural state as possible, so to have that counterbalance between the concrete at First Street versus the green space at the riverfront at the police station. The other observation is that the July meeting you guys talked about, you have two proposals that you're still considering. One is $60 million, one's $150 million. Listening to $2.5 million is your discussion about whether you can afford $2.5 million or not makes this proposal ridiculous. The fact that there's a $150 million project was a discussion back in July that asked all of you which was a more feasible budget. Was 60, 70 million? I mean, several of you talked about being big and bold, and that's good. But you also talked about a feasible budget, a realistic budget being in the $75 million range versus $150 million range. I think that you agreed back then, and the consensus was that 75 was a more reasonable number. So to all of our points this evening, that you've got two considerations only, and you need more. The $150 million frontier is just, it's outrageous. And hearing about $2.5 million now, the frontier is looking for $20 million of tax increment financing and the free land. You've already discussed that it's too expensive, so removing it now would be the best solution so that you can reconsider other options. And Mayor Klinkhammer talked about you guys need to refocus your issues to think what really would be a best solution at this site. So, I mean, you've got 3 or 4 months. I'm really, really hoping that you'll consider more than just these two options. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, are there additional items from Mayor, staff, and council? Okay. Yes.
I was going to make a comment. It had nothing to do with any of this, but I was going to anyway. As one election season ends, another begins. That's my topic for a quick little note here. As I announced in September, I'll not be seeking a 4th term. And that being said, and looking at what was once still is pretty full, room full of concerned citizens here tonight, I want to encourage others to pick up the mantle. Sure, it takes bravery to run for office, a little daunting even, but in the end, a very rewarding experience. I can't think of a better way to serve your city, love your city, or get to know your city than running for office. To those who've already thrown their hats in the ring, incumbents and hopefuls alike, thank you. But the more the merrier. I can assure you having an opponent will make you a better candidate and ultimately, no doubt, a better alderperson. December 19th is the petition deadline, so there's still plenty of time to consider. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? No, and we do not have an executive session today, so that's one. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Bancroft, second by Alderman Casella. Roll call.
Bessner?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Sultanas?
Yes.
Calamares?
Yes.
Daylight
Yes.
Bongard?
Yes.
Bancroft?
Yes.
Petrilla?
Yes.
Werba?
Yes.
Real quick, shout out. All this money goes in about 5 business. Okay, I know it's a funny money, but let me just tell you, bragging is